Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup, where we take a look even back at the week of motorsport from around the world, including a very hot, humid and sadly very dull Grand Prix in Singapore. But there's a thrilling MotoGP back in Misano in Italy. Still no return for Razgatliogu in World Superbikes, but Daniel Petrucci, is that how you pronounce his name?
Two C's, a ch.
Petrucci does his own sweep of the weekend to the delight of the home fans. Carl Larson, Tiff's favourite, dominates Bristol NASCAR in a race lacking much drama as the playoff field gets cut from 16 to 12. It's all happening there. BMW take their first hypercar win at Indianapolis, while back home, Tom Ingram is singing in the rain at Silverstone, that nasty little national circuit. But first in the news, what are we going to talk about first? Let's talk about Singapore. Formula One, swearing. What do you make of all that? Because the FIA
swearing in Singapore.
They're not very happy.
Oh, well, it's the FIA boss. What's his name? I forget his name.
I've gone right off him, I've got to say.
Gone right off him. It's an automatic thing. There's one. I saw a film on board of a Caterham driver getting involved in a crash, and it was just a natural response. But the bleeper was like bleep, 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 bleep. It happened. It's a natural thing, as I tweeted. It's just a ridiculous thing to try and stop these things. I was watching the golf in Scotland. There's a Scottish, I think it's McIntyre. Is it McIntyre?
Yep.
And he was hooking them in, and it was just. It's a natural thing.
Well, I tell you, worse than
humans do.
I just asked you what fair. Did you watch the Man City Arsenal game? The swearing in that, and they normally footballers they put their hand up over their mouth to try and disguise it, but they didn't care left, and the cameras were on them, so it is natural. It's not very nice. No. Do you know what I don't like? I can get away with that, but I don't like it when people like Gary Lineker, massive following, again, talking about football, but anyone, it doesn't matter who it is, when they think they can swear online. You've done that a couple of times before, and I think you absolutely...
No, I hate it. I do it. I know.
Don't do it. You don't need to. You're far more intelligent than that. You can use your amazing vocabulary. I haven't got a good vocabulary. That's why...
But when the commentators apologise, that points out that that's not how you should talk. And but then you watch any comedy show now, and the C word comes in, not just the F word.
It does not.
They do. The C word is now coming in after 9 o'clock. I've heard the C word.
What comedy have you been watching?
But they all add swear words now in comedy, because the easiest way to get a laugh is to use a swear word. They actually use it deliberately, not just as a sudden response to something happening. They're using the F word a lot.
The F word, but not the C word. But we're not talking about comedy. We're talking about Formula One. Should Formula One ban swearing? Should the FIA ban swearing?
Not with spontaneous, and especially as a foreign driver. I know they probably knows what the word means. They speak brilliant English, but Max, it's just some words you pick up, and if you're like a Brazilian, probably Nelson Piquet or Ayrton Senna, even when they came over to Britain for the first time, probably effed and blind occasionally because they'd heard everyone else doing it. It's just a release. It is a release, you're right. That most human beings do, and it's very hard to stop it. Ask people to try and avoid it. And if you become a repetitive user of the word, if you're using it every Grand Prix and nobody else is, pull someone to one side. I like Lewis Hamilton said, Max, don't do this. What was it? They had to do some work of public interest was what the FIA stewards punished him for. I don't know quite what he's supposed to do, but Max and then Max retaliated in the post-race media. He answered very short questions, and he said, if anyone wants the whole story, I'll hold a press conference outside, not inside the official FIA press conference. So if you want to talk to me. But he said it's the sort of thing that puts him off staying in Formula One, He often talks, doesn't he, about retiring early. It's quite surprising. Often Max will say, I'm not going to be doing this forever. I'm not going to be doing this,
Well, he's the type of guy that at the end of this season, if for some miracle Lando did beat him, type of guy that you can just say, you know what, I can't be bothered with this anymore.
He'd love Lamore. He'd love to do other stuff,
So, joking aside, in terms of swearing, I'm in awe of these people that have these incredible outbursts, and they don't swear, because I do. If I'm in that situation, I do. But I do think you could be a little bit that emotion. You could curb that emotion a little bit when you're on. I've mentioned people like Hadjar and Dan Tipton. We've mentioned before, where they're rude. It's not about an outburst of their emotions. They're actually rude, and that's what I don't like. But the swearing, you know what?
They're rude to people without swearing. That's the funny thing. So
That's true.
Some of the words they say about their engineers and stuff diminishes them. So yeah, that was the Singapore swearing scandal. And then we had the Daniel Ricciardo story, which caused a bit of an upset. When he suddenly popped out and did the. I know, no, that's not good. Because the whole point is, I'd always loved to have a third car in a team somewhere. Like Gilles Villeneuve became famous when McLaren ran a third car at Silverstone. He starred. Jody Scheckter was another McLaren third car in the Grand Prix. They allowed extra entries. And of course, you can't do that anymore. It's 20 cars and all the points and all the pits and all the rules and all the regulations. But, I'd love that ability to run a third car. And one of the reasons they say you can't run a third car is it would interrupt the point system, because you'd have 3 cars to try and get the points. Well, it would appear that Red Bull have got 4 cars. And although everybody denies it, apparently RB got Daniel in to do as a sort of a thank you and a little sort of compliment. Go out and get a fastest lap, Daniel, to make your weekend of misery a happier one, because it may well be and probably is your last Grand Prix. But, I don't take that. I think without doubt it was a take a point off Lando mission. And I think that's really bad. It's not on.
I've said on this podcast before, you shouldn't be allowed to set the fastest lap with new tyres with less than 3 laps to go. So it should be like they do in some formulas where they close the pit lane with a couple of laps to go. Same sort of thing. You can go in the pits if you need to, but fastest lap doesn't count on new tyres with if you get them in the last couple of laps, few laps.
But I don't like it anyway.
I don't like it.
I've never liked it. There should never be a point for fastest lap, because you're doing a
Grand
cricket.
Prix. It's not cricket. I mean,
what about not cricket? It's just not a Grand Prix. Grand Prix, you win the race.
Well, it's not etiquette, is what it's.
No,
that was my very bad terminology for saying it's bad etiquette.
But anyway, they still haven't dropped poor Daniel. He was in tears afterwards, being interviewed, and I think this might be, and my life. Then Thomas, he went on about, this is my life. My life is in a cockpit. I can't imagine not being in a cockpit. Well, you could be in an IndyCar cockpit, and the rest of the world loves you, Daniel. You could go home and be in a supercar cockpit. You could be in a world sports car, Le Mans cockpit. It's not as if you're going to stop racing, Daniel. Many people want you. You're still mega quick, not quite on the ball in Formula One anymore. But it's because we all love it. He was almost in tears. But why don't they say it's his last Grand Prix? I mean, this dragging it out scenario. We've now got 4 weeks to the United States Grand Prix, so they don't really have to make a final season for another 4 weeks before we find out who turns up in the Circuit Americas.
Is it 4 weeks? My goodness.
Yeah, there's a big gap all of a sudden. Just when we're all getting excited, it's all boom, boom, boom. It's not till October the 20th or something, the next Grand Prix.
Wow.
Well, they recovered from the heat, which was another story. The heat and the track. We'll come with the track. The track's heat and hot, and the dull Grand Prix, which we'll mention when we get to the Grand Prix. But at the end of the race, Lewis and George couldn't make press conference because they were too hot. They'd overheated. And it goes back to this, our drivers over. We had this, didn't we? In was it Qatar, wasn't it, when they were out in the heat? And heat's always been a part of being a racing driver. There was Argentinian Grand Prix in the 50s where they'd have buckets of water on the slowest corner. The driver would slow right down and they'd literally chuck a bucket of water into the cockpit.
Wow.
I'm sat in, cockpits in GT cars with front engine radiators and literally burning my buttocks in one Grand Prix, one sports car race in Toyota in Japan. Sitting on the aluminium floor that was heated by aluminium pipes attached to an aluminium radiator with aluminium clamps. Trying to keep it light, boys. Yeah, burnt me bum. But we've had cool suits forever. It's been just cool suits, in the late 1980s, I think, in sports cars, and they've got them in GT racing. In fact, GT3 racing, it's compulsory air conditioning now, which I always think is going a bit too far. These kids have got to work a bit harder. In fact, funny enough, there was a driver in the World Sports Car Championship that had blamed him out breaking someone on a collision because his feet slipped off the pedals because the condensation from the air conditioning was making the pedals wet.
Oh, stop it.
That'll teach you to have air conditioning. Anyway, we've got cool suits, really advanced cool suits. But of course, these Formula One engineers are just so anally obsessed about weight. We can't paint the car because the weight of the paint. And Mercedes, of course, quite often in qualifying and free practice, both Mercedes drivers have occasionally said, my bum's hot, my seat's really hot. The radio, we'll sort that out later. It's happened for a year or two, so they must have got something, wiring or battery element, under their seats. So it appears the Mercedes is a hotter seat than the rest. But for goodness sake, if they do these, the computers, don't they, the whole Grand Prix, they work out the quickest way to go from A to B. Is it quicker to run with full tank of fuel and drive faster, or go with only 7/8 of the tank full and drive a bit slower? And they work at this complex. They don't always fill them up because they're so desperate to save an ounce or two of weight. But if your driver's knackered, you're going to be half a second a lap down if you fatigue and exhausted. So the computer needs to work out how much faster you can drive if you've got a cool suit on. And they can't be that heavy. I don't know nowadays, these modern little electric pumps and filaments in your jacket, they can't add that much weight. I don't know. Can someone please write below in the comments how much heavier?
Well, they said they normally get it. Go on, Tiff.
Yeah, I was just going to say they make it out. They're blaming the organisers for running races in too hotter temperatures. Which is just ludicrous. Put a cool suit on.
Yeah. But they and they're also saying that there's typically always a safety car at Singapore
to give you a cool down period.
Yeah, just to let you relax a little bit. In fact, there hasn't been a safety car in the last 9 races, which is incredible.
Whoa, that's a stat for you.
You like that one?
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't hear what's his name talking about that. Where was it?
I actually I got that from Harry Benjamin, not from Crofty. Harry's the man.
But you see them go around that circuit. It's an exhausting track. It is corner after corner. But then we had this dull Grand Prix. We'll talk about dull Grand Prix, then we'll actually go to the results. But they had 4 DRS zones, added an extra one, and nobody can still stay close enough. They just all soon dropped over a second because so many corners slowing you down with the aero. And I said it should be done in the daylight because when you watch FP1 and FP3, it's so much more attractive. You see the scenery of Singapore. You see the water. There's motorway going across the top of the track. Some wonderful scenery. A bit like Monaco. You get those wonderful shots of the harbour and the yachts and everything. Now, I don't know whether they run it at night because means it can run at 1 p.m. in Europe, and it's a timing of it. But the Malaysian Grand Prix ran in the daylight. And then whether it's too hot in the sun, I'd argue that because the temperature's solid 32 degrees, I think, 24 hours a day. Yeah. It's more the humidity that's drivers but you can still run it in the 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. local time when the sun's maybe setting a bit. But I honestly think if you get dull on-track action, at least you'd have the enjoyment of seeing the backdrop to the circuit.
Otherwise, that's really going to work when you're listening to it on radio, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's just an Arctic lorry carrying.
I'm just trying to help
sheep.
the TV viewers have a more enjoyable view because otherwise you just see close-ups of cars. You don't even know which corner on most of the time. If you just open the door of the living room and watch the telly, you'd have no idea which corner they were going around. So it doesn't work. And they've
rubbish idea.
I'm sure at the end of they might have to knock down the odd historic building or two, but say there's turn 1. Instead of because the lefts never work because you block on the way in and then every single file so everyone goes out of track limits. If they can somehow make that into a long, tight left-hand corner or something and create a braking zone. But there was nowhere around that track, where there was a real clear cut.
Maybe they get somebody in halfway through, like someone like Nick Leeson. So Nick Leeson was the Bearings Bank guy that did all his time in Singapore, and he just says, yeah, well, in that pub there, I did this, and in this pub, I did a few million there. I bet he's got a few stories about Singapore to liven it up.
Karun says run all 3 tyres in every race, which it's a bit artificial, but, not Formula One to me, but we got DRS. But that's a possible. So then you've got 2 pit stops and more strategy. So perhaps run all 3 tyres if you can't change the track. Otherwise, we've just got another Monaco on our hands.
But then a lot of wins and a lot of surprise wins have come from strategy where they've done a 1-stop or a 2-stop instead of a 3-stop. But if you're forced to do a 2-stop,
you mean the crash now, PK? You mean that strategy? Crash now, crash now, crash the car. PK, crash the car. That strategy, that worked really well, actually. It was a good strategy. That's how desperate they were in that circuit to try and... So anyway, to the race, which was ditch dull. It was interesting, FP1, FP2. It seemed to be McLaren and Ferrari. Ferrari seemed to be on the go. This is, they were quick last time out. But by the time we got to FP3, it was Mercedes and Red Bull had sort of overtaken Ferrari, pushed them down the rankings. And so it happened in qualifying. It was funny, wasn't it? Ferrari just seemed to slowly go off the boil all weekend. As did, of course, Mr. Piastri, this kid that we were all raving about last week in Oscar. You know, he's definitely the finished article. He's obviously still not quite the finished article. I mean, the first three practices, all three of them, I think it was 0.6 down on Lando in every one of those sessions. It's weird, isn't it? Just when we think he's a mercurial, you know, error-free talent, he just wasn't on the pace. So Q1, we lost to two Saubers and Gasly, quite normal, and Stroll. I mean, Stroll looks like he's got no interest. He moans on the radio. My mistake, I watched the drivers' buddy conference or whatever they call it, drivers' briefing, drivers' something press conference. And Stroll, he had Verstappen in the middle and someone else, and Verstappen was being interviewed, and he just sat there laid back, looking that way. You know, Max is answering his question. Oh, my turn. Yeah, well, we're getting better. Well, we got a crap car. They can't say got a crap car. That's what Max got a fucking car. Anyway, what is he doing? He's Daddy Stroll. Come on, it's embarrassing the family name. And of course, Ricciardo went out in his maybe final qualifying. Q2, we lost Ocon, the other Alpine. Alpine go up and down the grid. 1 minute, almost top 10, aren't they? And then they're boom, bottom 15. K-Mag went out. Two Williams went out. Conor Pinto again, 0.007 slower than Albon. It's impressive. I can't believe it.
Really impressive, especially around that circuit.
And of course, the other one out back to his normal position was Checo Perez. Perez back out on the Q2. Another one that you think, oh, and they must be so hard at Red Bull trying to sack him because he keeps on going out with these good drives. 1 in every 10, 1 in every 6. He has a good race.
Just when they're about to sack him.
Oh, I know. Oh, flipping hell. Then in Q3, we had this bizarre thing with the Ferraris 9th and 10th. Leclerc was at the back more because he track limits on his best lap. So Ferrari's really tumbled out.
You were right about Ferrari, by the way, always, because I thought, I only said it to be a bit contentious, but Leclerc is clearly the better driver there. Yeah. It's only tiny margins, but he's clearly better the whole way through.
I don't know what Carlos was doing, because it looked like he was about to try and start a high-speed lap, start a quick lap, but he hadn't really given himself enough momentum into that last corner to sort of start the lap at the right speed. So he's probably using the throttle a bit stronger and the tyres. And anyway, barrier. So Lando was out front. Lando was just supreme. Max was only 0.2 behind Max. Getting that he's struggling. He still tries as hard as he can. And then we had the Mercedes 3rd and 4th. With Oscar down in 5th. Hulkenberg 6th. Behrman would have been 5th. Hulk. So then Alonso's still putting his effort in. Yuki 8th. Hello Red Bull. Yuki Tsunoda, well quicker than Daniel. Been performing for you for how many years now? 2 years, 3 years in the second division. I mean, at least stick, Checo back down in RB for the last 5 races. Do that.
Absolutely.
For 5 races. Put Yuki up. Then try the last 5 races of the year, or 6 races, and put Checo down with RB to go up against Larson to see if Checo can beat Larson. And of course, it's an easier car to drive, Checo. You've been complaining that the Red Bull's a bit, on the edge all the time. Well, maybe try and, see if you can beat Larson. I'd love to see that happen. Proper thing. Put Yuki in Red Bull and him down there. And then we had the race. We had 62 laps of dullness. The interesting thing was Lewis. Lewis started on softs, didn't he? Out of all the front runners, were on mediums.
Lewis's strategy, I don't get it. If you're into, like we say all the time, if you're into conspiracy theories, you would definitely think there was something going on because they pitted him so early. They pitted
because he was on softs. He was on softs.
Absolutely.
But they weren't even new softs. I mean, his idea was he could out accelerate Max down to turn 1 because he was behind Lando. Yeah. He was on the clean side of the road. They don't talk about the clean side of the track anymore. You remember the good old days? It was always the right hand side had all the traffic, whereas the left hand side hasn't been used and won't have any grip. And yet they don't seem to mention that. But anyway, he didn't outdrag Max. He soon went backwards on his soft tyres, and he moaned like mad. No, mate, we're on the wrong tyres, mate. Why am I on these tyres, mate? And then when he stopped he then complained we stopped too soon, mate.
Yeah, Max doesn't get it start wrong very often, does he? He doesn't get much wrong very often. He's very good. But you just said Lando was supreme. Let's have a chat about that, because Lando hit the wall twice and was incredibly lucky.
A kiss is just a kiss.
Well, if it's a kiss, why was he so concerned on the radio?
Well, you've got to check a kiss out. I bet he shat himself. Or can I say shat himself? Is that a slang
you can say
word?
Tiff, our 42 listeners won't mind whatever you say.
But also Lando got his start right for the first time. So Lando, the frustrating thing for McLaren was that Oscar had the off weekend. You know, if there is this dream idea of Lando maybe taking the drivers' championship, you know, every time it's sort of Oscar ahead of Lando, or we can't swap you now. No, it doesn't work. No, we can't do that. No, he's going to overtake the Leclerc. No. And then just when they're dominating and you need the car, that's why it doesn't work. But Max, I mean, the gap was about 5 seconds after 10 laps, and it was 15 seconds. There was 20 seconds. I mean, it was just, apart from kissing the barrier twice.
Tiff, you've got to get close to get those fast laps, but not. I mean, why? That's too close, because you could have easily. Who had the puncture? Was it Hulkenberg? Did he? One of the passes? Yeah. Anyway, they clipped the wall. They got a puncture. So easy.
Anyway,
but it was a boring race.
Oscar got back to third, frustrated. Oscar got back to third. Max did his Max.
So Red Bull, McLaren well and truly leading the championship.
Yeah. Lewis dropped to sixth in the end, wasn't he? Leclerc did a good job, 10th up to fifth. He also almost caught George, I think. Leclerc had a good race, moving up from 10th to almost fourth. But yeah, boy, it was dull, unfortunately.
Colapinto had a good race. Alex Albon a little bit unlucky. Well, very unlucky, but I like Alex Albon.
Well, he wasn't very happy about turn one when Franco.
What's he doing? What's Franco
doing?
It's
one of those things, and it's a stupid call. As I say, it's a stupid call. Every left, right, left is a stupid corner on lap one. How many people didn't make the first left? 4, 5. Exactly. You couldn't really see them because the camera sort of followed the leaders. So, of course, Franco was on the inside, and he only knew Yuki was there, so he thought, well, 2 of us will get through. But, of course, outside of Yuki was probably 2 more, including Albon. So they don't all make it through because it's a stupid type of corner for your first corner. And Tilke's done this everywhere in the world. Did Tilke do? I don't know, Tilke sorted out Singapore, whoever did. You've got to have a single turn corner for turn one.
Yeah, obvious.
It's a simple part of track design.
It's obvious, but does that make a bit of jeopardy for the race? So it makes it exciting for the race that you got a Monza or
ruins the race because 2 of your contenders lose their front wings and the real race. A Grand Prix, you want to see 2 go head to head for 60 laps. It's a Grand Prix, not a sprint. They can knock the wings off in sprints.
That was the only bit of racing I saw really yesterday was Charles and George for 4th and 5th place. So other than that, there was nothing.
He was never going to get by. The F1 Academy, of course, were down there. The girls were having a wonderful trip to Singapore.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, you got 3 standouts. Then you've got Block.
I was about to say Leah Block. The only the excitement is this Leah Block girl because she's still only 17. Of course, she's the daughter of the great Ken Block. Done rallying. She won a rally championship. I think she won a class in the championship, not the overall. But nevertheless, she won a rally championship. She's done lots of nitro stunt driving. So she's obviously got the car control inherited from her dad. I hadn't done anything. She did the Spanish, and there was some Spanish winter series in single season when she knew she was going to get this. And she was like 35th. There were 40 car fields. And she couldn't get in the top 30. And then I think she did some other Formula 4 races in the springtime to try and, get some mileage. And she started at the back of this F1 Academy. And she was hanging on to the top 3, so she could be the name for next year.
She was gone.
Yeah, the problem is, where does it get them? Again, it's brilliant advertising to promote girls to go karting. This is what it's all about, really. But for the winners, like, Abbi. So Abbi's, again, dominated, brilliant, start to finish, 2 races. I think she's almost got the championship decided. She might have to go to 1 more of them. There's 2 more rounds to go. But, so the glamour, the glitter, the stars, the TV cameras are all there. And she'll next year just disappear into an anonymous world. Because she gets a free Freca. She can't go back and stay in Forumal One Academy where all the TV cameras and the publicity is. She'll go off to Freca, where Marta Garcia, who won the championship last year, beating Pulling, she can't get into the top 20 in the Freca races. In fact, Dorian Pound has also joined Garcia in the it's the Iron Dames team. They run under the top team, team, Prema. It's a sort of Prema sub team. But Pan can't get the top 20 either. They both run about 23rd and 24th. So you imagine this is going to be where Abbi's going to go next year. Because I can't see her being any much better than Marcel Garcia or Dorian Pound in Freca. So while she's done a job now, encouraging more girls to have a go, I almost feel sorry for Abbi that she's going to suddenly go from this glittering world, going around the world, winning podiums, to, battling the back of the field in Freca.
She's brilliant, and I love her. I think she's brilliant out of the car as well. But I think if you said to most motoring fans, who's this and who's this, and you showed a picture of Susie Wolff and Abbi Pulling, they would know, which is a shame because Abbi's so talented, such a dynamic little thing. Jamie Chadwick really hit it right with that women's series, didn't she? Because she was allowed to do 2 years, won $500,000 each year, stay on to do it another year, and just dominated both years. But Abbi Pulling's been brilliant this year.
Dominant, I know. But anyway, Leah Block for next year.
She almost got a third place because Pin had a 5-second penalty.
I say Pan, but French has to be Pan, surely.
No, who got third place? The French girl that's racing now in the academy, Pin. Anyway, she.
That's what I'm saying. It's got to be Pan. It's French, surely.
Pan.
I know our pronunciation is terrible. It can't.
Mine's awful. Mine is dreadful. At least you speak some French, but mine's awful. But so she almost got a podium in the first race, missed out by a couple of hundredths of a second. But there you go. Where we go next? Well, let's go to
where
back to
entertainment
Misano.
was almost guaranteed. We've had some boring MotoGP races. We've said the last in the last 3 or 4 rounds, but it was all on at Misano. In fact, the last Misano wasn't that good. Was it? Was processional.
Well, it wasn't great last Misano when I was there, and certainly not for the Italian fans because Pecco, their boy. It was all about Marc Marquez, and it was all about the Spaniards basically all weekend. But this weekend is a little bit different.
Well, half of it. Well, no, in the end, it was completely different. You're right, in the end, because it was the Spaniards were looking like they were going to cause a thing. But we had 3 great races. Back at Misano, because it was the weekend of the Kazakhstan Grand Prix, which got cancelled, which is why they were back at Misano for another go. But all 3, MotoGP, Moto2, Moto3, all such entertaining racing. The sprinters, you're right. So Bagnaia won the sprint, beating his Spanish rivals between him and Jorge Martin for this championship. Going, this battle is a great battle.
It is really close at the top.
But then it's just the 3 guys on the best bikes, the 3 up front. And the 2024 Ducati is just a bike at a class of its own. So Bagnaia won the sprint race from Jorge Martin. Who was third in the end? Bastianini, the other factory Ducati, was third. Marc Marquez, his usual 4th on the 2023 Ducati, hanging on, dreaming of when he's going to be on the factory bike next year, taking Bastianini's place. And then Pedro Costa didn't fall off for a change, which he's been doing repeatedly, tried to make the KTM as fast as Ducati. He finished 5th in the sprint, but then he did crash in the Grand Prix.
Did a bit of KTM off-roading.
And he was running 4th. He was actually reasonably on the back of the top 3. But I mean, he's just trying to. The management, his manager, they should look. But wait for next year. We'll get you a better bike next year. Don't damage yourself this year, trying to be a hero against those Ducatis. But it was this 3-bike race in the Grand Prix, which was fascinating because Bagnaia made the start and got the lead. But this time, Martin managed to get past him and looked like he might pull away. And Bastianini was in trouble, dropping back. And then, hold that
thought. Hold that
Bagnaia.
One.
Yeah, they're not Bagnaia, but not Bagnaia was then dropping away. So Bastianini, his teammate, then overtook the championship leading Bagnaia, not the championship, the other one. Too many Italian names. Anyway, so Bastianini catches Jorge Martin and becomes the new challenger for the lead. Well, Bagnaia had a bit of a breather. But then Bagnaia gradually actually began to catch up again. It was going to be 3 of them again. And then out of the blue, yet again, as we see in these talented riders, there was the clattering sound of a Ducati scraping along the tarmac. And lo and behold, there was Francesco Bagnaia on his Italian bottom. So that's ruined his championship hopes. He's dropped a lot of points, obviously, which left Bastianini, the sort of the factory Ducati, trying to beat the Pramac satellite Ducati. And I don't know why Martin knew that Bagnaia was out, so knew he'd got like a 20-point bonus. Decided he was going to defend this Grand Prix as if it was the last one and every point was absolutely had to win. And he was blocking Bastianini, blocking. There was one moment with the commentators when he made his move on the straight, almost a bit too late, because Bastianini was almost coming alongside. But in the end, in my opinion, but it's controversial, he got his just desserts, because Bastianini decided on the last lap, he was fed up with this blocking, and he just lunged him. It was a perfect, in my mind, it was a perfect block pass. I mean, he didn't try to turn into the corner where the corner was, but he kept going a bit straight for a bit longer and virtually he did run him off the road. He ran Martin off the road. But although some of the reports, because some of the riders are saying you've got to stop this, but I mean, Valentino Rossi used to do this. Marquez in his prime was doing it. The last corner, Estoril's famous for it, the hairpin left, where someone will come up the inside and down. And the point is, they said they clashed, but I mean, Bastianini didn't actually hit Martin. It was only when Martin tried to lead into the corner that almost Martin hit Bastianini, because I want to turn in, and Bastianini says, well, you can't turn in now. You blocked me for 5 laps. You go off the road that way. So I think in bike world, that was a fair pass. And I think the British commentators were in the same mood. But it was a very late lunging. Of course, the Italian crowd loved it, and Bastianini loved it. Especially for old Bastian, he's off. I don't know where he's going. He's on the satellite team next year because he's been dropped from the factory team to make way for Marc Marquez, who of course finished third.
They do have a bit of argy-bargy there, but it is forgotten about quite quickly with the motorbike. So in terms of the standing, Jorge Martin, 341, Bagnaia now 317. There were only 2 points. There's only 2 points difference.
It was seven. It was 7. So the gap's gone from 7 to 24. Wow. Bastianini's now only 35 behind Bagnaia. And he just took third. He's just got one ahead of Marc Marquez.
Marquez, yeah.
So there's still 6 rounds to go, 12 races still to go. This is going to run and run. Entertainment guaranteed till Christmas Day or sometime around then. And Moto2 was the same. Had a fantastic race, a 3-way fight. Sadly, Jake Dixon, qualified 5th, was another clattering bicycle going down the road on its side, and Jake crashed out. But it was an Italians trio. The Italians didn't care which one won, but it was Celestino Vietti won by about half a bike from Aaron Canet and Tony Arbolino. But it was just, all 3 of them led at one stage, I think, and it was just brilliant stuff. And they all do block passes. I mean, they grow up doing it in Moto3, which the next race, the block passes are the way, particularly in Misano, because it is a bit of, the racing was good this time, it wasn't last time, but it's still not an attractive track to look at. There's no features. There's lots of too many turns, curbs, green, track limits, a lot of track limit penalties going on. Not the most exciting circuit to look at when you think of Mugello or something like that, But it produced good racing this week. Then the Moto3, again, there was a 4-way battle for the lead with David Alonso, his Colombian star, heading for the future. Yep. Led almost all the way until eventually the 3 behind him attacked him, blocked past him. And he dropped back to 3rd, but then on the last lap, he made 3rd, back to 1st again to win another Grand Prix. Wonderful stuff. In fact, in 2nd, almost catching on the line, was this Spanish rookie that they're saying is the next superstar to follow Alonso, who's following Costa,
whoever.
So Angel Pigueras, the Spanish 17-year-old, nearly got him on the line. But great entertainment. And then Alonso's already, I don't know who started these sort of pre-arranged celebrations halfway around the slowing down lap. But Rossi used to do it all the time. They used to have sort of, a cooker came out and he started cooking things on the chef. And they're just all prison chains and sometimes and putting flags in sand. They've always done this MotoGP. But Alonso's decided he's going to start with them already, Moto3. And he had a unicycle parked up. So he
saw that.
Gets off his motorbike, he's won the race, gets on the unicycle and waves at the crowd. He's definitely a real superstar.
They're bloody hard to ride, those things, the unicycles.
I can
Yeah, they
assure
all
you,
stop. They all stop and get flags.
I don't know because I've never tried. Have you
They all
tried?
stop and
any
get.
IMSA?
Yeah, it's hard. They all stop and get a flag, but I haven't seen anyone stop and get a unicycle before.
Oh no! So he's already coming up with their thing. Staying in Italy, World Superbikes were 100 miles or so up north to Cremona, a track I've never even heard of. Leaving the Rimini coastline, and top rank Razgatliogu couldn't make it. Hoped to. He's still got a problem with this. I actually wrote down what he had. He fell off in free practice in Magny-Cours the previous round and couldn't do any of the races, obviously. And he had traumatic pneumothorax. And it's air between the lungs and the chest, which sort of compresses your lungs so you can't breathe deep. How the air gets there, because I don't know where it comes from. But anyway, he couldn't make the race. He's still doctor's orders not to run. Hopes to be out next weekend in wherever they're going, which I'll tell you later. But someone else swept. There's a real point again in Italy. The Italians had a good weekend with their bikes. Daniel Petrucci, who was a star of MotoGP for many years, 5-10 years ago. He won all three in his satellite Barney Racing Ducati. The last round beating the two factory Ducatis. So he had a great weekend. Alex Lowe's the best British results in his Kawasaki, had a second and a fifth. But it was Petrucci's weekend, or Petrucci. That's two C's. I get confused with a single C and the one C or the CH.
Two C.
Chiesa. I'm sure one C is a K.
Let's go to NASCAR. Let's move on from the bikes. Go to NASCAR because your man
that was
number 5
it wasn't so exciting. It's all the drama. So this was the last of the 3 rounds to cut from 16 to 12.
Kyle Larson was on rails.
Well, he was. So that was out front. So that enjoyed us. We enjoyed that. Kyle just dominated. But it was more about who's going to be cut, you know, at this stage of the year. And for half the race, there were people plus 1 place, minus 1 place, plus 2 places, and you could be in and out. And so it was getting to be the classic last round shootout until Martin Truex, bless him, former champion, retiring this year in the playoffs for the final time, hoping to be a champion again. He bust his pit lane speed limit by apparently 0.09 miles an hour, 0.09 miles an hour, which is a drive-through penalty. And he went from running 5th to running 25th. And he had a bad, he was in the points, out of the points anyway, but he got himself back into, and he didn't make it. So Truex was the big story of the night. His teammate also, Ty Gibbs, the young kid, he didn't make the cut.
What team are they in? The Truex Junior?
Those two are both in the same team. The
Gibbs what team? Gibbs team.
The Gibbs team, which is Ty Gibbs' dad or granddad. So Gibbs runs in the Gibbs team. Keselowski didn't make it, former champion, nor did Harrison Burton. It wasn't really expected to. So now there are 12 as they start 3 more races to decide who's going to cut. So it goes down to 8, then 4.
But the drama, I can't contain myself.
Kyle Larson was just epic cruising to do. But one thing, a lovely thing, you talk about the motorbike celebrations. And this was obviously pre-arranged again. So Larson comes into the beginning, stops on the track, sort of at pit lane entry, right? And he's also going to go up normally to do his donuts from the crowd, which he done some of those, and he come back to the start of the entry lane. And the marshals or a friend sticks his 8-year-old son, I don't know, 8, maybe 9, no idea. So he sticks him in the driver's side, which is on the left, in the door next to Dad, and he's just got his legs in the car, and he's got his fingers holding on to the outside rail of the car. And then in his NASCAR car, drives up the track, in front of the crowds, all whooping and wailing. When he's like, you imagine FIA health and safety. And then
what
when
did they say about it?
They said nothing. They knew it was all going to be done. I'm sure it was permission. And then the kid gets out of the roof of the car with Dad, and it was wonderful. I don't approve really of kids on podiums, to be honest, but I just laughed at the fact they do it out there where they never dream of, imagine these celebrations. So that was that. So that was that. IMSA, just a quick mention over at Indianapolis, the IMSA boys with their hypercars and GTs and LMP2s went to the Indianapolis track using the clockwise Grand Prix circuit. And the BMW hypercar, its first win. In fact, they came first and second. Their LMDHs in the World Championship and their GTPs in IMSA. So it's good news for BMW to get a win with their hypercar, the 6-hour race round there. And Was that it? No, and then of course we come home. Talking rain. We come home to the rain of Silverstone.
Yeah, you're right.
I missed anything, have I? No.
No, you haven't. I thought you did, but you didn't.
So Tom Ingram was really the speed of the day. He had a win, a fourth, and a win.
Well, he had a lucky pole position. Well, he wasn't lucky. He still got pole position. But
I didn't read that for a number. And some real midfielders were on pole out of the blue.
Yeah, the weather was awful. It was in the UK this weekend. If you weren't here, the weather was awful, especially.
So was the track around the middle of qualifying, was it?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a lottery, and four or five people got disqualified or penalised, which meant he got pole position. So from his own admission, he said he was lucky to get pole position. He didn't expect it.
But boy, the rain, it was foul, wasn't it? And the trouble is, the sad thing is, I think a lot of people think, oh, it's going to be raining. This will be better, be spinning and crashing. This will be more exciting. But it just doesn't work that way. You can't race so close, in wet conditions, and you make a small mistake and you'll lose a second, the gaps take out. So the racing wasn't actually that exciting. And Tom, it's close and it was bumping and boring, but not as much as a sort of dry race around that rather silly sort of go-kart track that they use.
I don't like the national. And it's quite interesting what you say, that you would expect there to be more crashes, but there's actually far less in the wet.
Yeah. Ash Sutton, he was always at it, trying to catch up and go backwards and forwards. He actually clombered into Ingram on the last lap of the last race. I saw that last
race.
And then, although they laughed at each other,
that was close to spinning.
Well, yeah. And Sutton, when he got the microphone after Tom Ingram had said, "This is great, I won too, and I'm up for the championship," and Ash came over all smiling, ha ha ha. And Ash, when they said to Ash that was a bit close, and he quickly said, "Well, yeah, I tried a different line." And then Tom can't have seen me. And Tom came across the front of me. So he was quickly getting any defence in, even before nobody's accused you yet, Ash. Well, Ash, and he was already making his story for the stewards. I did personally, I don't think really Tom did come into you, Ash. I think you were half out of control. The trouble is, when you're trying to go on the throttle with front wheel drive, if you get too much power, you just get an instant understeer. Some high-powered sort of mini, road car drove, borrowed a press fleet car. You get a cambered country road, you put the throttle into it, the front just goes down the hill, doesn't it, towards the ditch. That's why I don't like front wheel drive. It'll just move the front of the car.
Yeah.
If the back of my car steps out on a country lane, the back of the car will bounce off the bank. But if your front, anyway, enough of that. And then they're now equal on points, Jake Hill and Tom Ingram, going into the final three races of Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. That should be epic. Ash Sutton's 33 points behind, and I think there's about 60 points available if you win everything at the weekend. But I think it's going to be it's an Ingram Hill.
They got this not balance of power, the hybrid boost thing, haven't they? So how will that affect it and going to the last round with the two leaders?
It'll only really affect the second race, when you get them, because also they have to, the tyre thing, which of course didn't work at Silverstone with the wet, because if you run them soft in race one, you have to run the top 10, have to run the medium in the second race. So the medium guys, the slower drivers start overtaking the faster ones with better tyres and more boost. So it's a bit mixed up. But of course, one of the headlines of the weekend was Abbi Eaton's Porsche Supercup win. And this is out of the blue. It's brilliant, absolutely fantastic to see her win. She was second in the first race. She won her class because she's pro-am, and it's split into two pros and pro-ams. I don't know what the qualification is. But it was just, the second race was the longer race, and she held off one of the most experienced drivers in the wet all the way, saving her wet tyres. It was a brilliant drive. But it's bizarre because she's been almost nowhere all year. And whether she's done, in fact, in the official TOCA test on the Friday before the weekend, she was 14th, I think. And her best result has been like fifth in the Pro-Am class. And I think 14th overall in the race, something like that. She hadn't been in the top 10. But somehow they've clicked. But this is what happens with these one-make cars, because she's in a one-car team. I'm not sure what experience the team has. And I forget the name of the team. So it's just because sometimes it's like Prema in Formula 4, where the top four are Prema cars or something, because an engineer has suddenly said, why don't we try? I remember 3 years ago we put this on a car. Anyway, for whatever reason, because she qualified on pole, and came second overall in the first race, won her class, and then won the second race. It was fantastic. So well done, Abbi, because obviously, she's been struggling in the bottom 10 and people are saying, there you go. But it just shows if you get, it's a bit like in a way, Jamie Chadwick, having that one win, because she's a sort of fourth and fifth in most of the races. And then boom, gets the car right. She loves the circuit. Everything just clicks. These cars are so finicky nowadays. So well done, Abbi.
Nice. What's on next week?
Bikes. You go to Indonesia for some MotoGP. You could go to Aragon for some World Superbikes. You can go to Donington for British Superbikes. And otherwise, there is, of course, NASCAR. Never not NASCAR. Kansas 1.5 mile as the first of 3 rounds begins to decide who's going to drop from 12 to 8 as the field narrows. Or, if you're in Britain, go to Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit for the British GT finale. 2 wonderful fixtures. Those 2, both the BTCC finale, which I don't know when that is. How soon does that come up? British GT finale at Brands this weekend. Oh yeah, the touring cars next weekend. So that's 2 consecutive weekends of fantastic homemade entertainment. For you
so
to
is
go,
this the
go
last
to both.
British Superbikes? Is this going to be the crescendo?
Yeah,
for
they go on a bit more, I think. They've got Donington on the 29th, and I think they got 2 more after that. And one more. They got 2 more.
one more. Brands Hatch, 11th to the 13th of October.
Also Brands Grand Prix. So again,
yeah,
that's 3 on the trot of Brands. I just realised 3 weekends on the succession. And I'd really recommend you go to all 3. If you want to be entertained by homemade motorsport, those are 3 cracking of different shapes and sizes: GT cars, touring cars, superbikes.
And Brands is such a beautiful place to watch. I wonder
what the ticket prices are. I'm going to look up that. See how the circuit charge differently for different categories.
Tell me when's the last time you rode a bike, and I'll look at the ticket price whilst you're doing it.
What about the last time I rode a bicycle or a motorbike? 5 years ago. About 5 or 7 for 5 weeks. I loved borrowing bikes and just go out for a blast, and then I scare myself.
So it's funny that you would ask me what the price for Brands Hatch for British Superbikes last event of the season, which is going to be very exciting. For an adult, £47. For a teenager. For a teenager,
just do one. Don't get too complicated now. We'll do. I can't remember. 47 for British
that's for the whole weekend. That's for the whole weekend.
Yeah, okay.
If you just want to go on the Sunday, it's £35. If you want to go on the Saturday, it's £25.
Oh, right, that's all right. What about the other 2? So £35 for Sunday for superbikes.
25 for Saturday.
And now just do one day. Stop confusing me. Are you going to look up the other one?
That is one day. What else am I looking at?
Oh, we're comparing touring cars, GT cars, and superbikes. So I only want one to compare. I can't compare all. So you said 35 for the Sunday of superbikes.
It's too complicated for.
Well, what did you think I wanted to know?
I thought you meant in general. I thought you were asking a general question. How much for British Superbike price or bike prices? On that note, thanks for joining. We'll see you next week.
What I'm going to do?
Feel free to post the results in the background, down below. You know what I mean.